I learned a lot from that. I also worked as a camera designer on Tales of Despero, which is a movie tie-in game. That game was also really bad. It was just the tools and the tech and the time, the people and the organization. It was just not there. And so, but I did a lot of like little camera things. I learned a lot through there and their scripting system and how it worked. And I learned a lot of things from it. And in fact, the things that I learned the most were what not to do. So when I would go to other studios, I'm like, oh, don't do that.
That was your growing pains phase.
Yes.
Of learning like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Yeah, and or that other people's growing pains too. Like I would see stuff that they would do, and I'm like, oh no.
They must feel horrible inside.
Yeah. So, I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned a little bit of humility in that, when before I got in the industry, I'm like, why do these people always do this with these games? Like, how hard is it? I'm like, I don't understand why they make why do bad games exist? That
Gotcha.
question,
Yeah.
right? And then I'm like, oh, I get it now, right? There's time constraints and there's IP restrictions and there's, tech problems and there's just all sorts of things that are fighting against you to stop you from finishing things. So
in retrospect, for this position,
yeah,
would it be advantageous to say, make sure the project that you're moving across a couple states for is like signed first, or how would you quantify how would you quantify the retrospect of this experience moment that you had to someone else that's maybe in the same position or thinking about moving away from their family to do this?
You know what? I don't know that I would have changed my mind in that situation. One of two things could have happened. I could have stayed and been unemployed, which would not have been the worst thing in the world for me, right? And then eventually found something. I just would have had to apply. What happened that was kind of crazy though with them was at the end of both of those projects, they stopped paying people.
Oh, wow. Like how they do it this day and age where they expect you to keep coming back to work and they're not paying you, or they just stop paying people and people are just like, screw this, I'm taking my computer, I'm going.
Some people did that. Most didn't. Most were, Salt Lake City has a lot of Mormons that are very nice and amicable people. And they were kind of like, well, I'll help you out. I'll try to get, as much as I can. And so I'm like that too, but I'm just slightly sarcastic, right? Like I'll try, right? Like I'll try to help you out, but this is kind of shitty. So we were doing that stuff and we were trying to get projects, and this was happening right when the economic crash was happening. So this is
2008.
This is late 2008.
Oh wow! So that was in the middle of your time there.
Yes, and so what they had promoted me too. They had said like, okay, we're going to put you in as lead designer, which by the way, I had a year-ish of experience.
Yeah.
And so if they're naming me lead designer, that's not like, I wouldn't have done that at the time. At the time,
at least it sounds like you didn't go into it going like, yeah, I am the man. And you just tried to front it off. So that's good.
No, it was more like, hey, you're motivated and you want to get stuff done, and that the reason that it's AP and designer on there is because there was a point where one of the publishers I was on another project that eventually got canceled because we were working with Midway. Midway went down right at that time. So
it sounds Midway went down and then came back and went down again like multiple times. Then
they did,
because I don't think that was when they were done.
No, that was when they were done. This was when they had basically sold Mortal Kombat. They had they had sold a couple of their IPs completely. And they were doing that to kind of pay bills, but then it was just done. Like they sold off everything. Yeah,
gotcha.
So that was. So they were under, and they had basically at one point the guys in management, people from Midway wouldn't talk to them, but they would talk to me. So
because you're a lead. Or just
because I would respond to things, I would listen to stuff, I would send them detailed information, right?
And somewhere at your job, they're like, "Why is this guy talking to them? Oh my god!"
Well, they were like, Frost, can you talk? Like they were okay with it too, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Which in hindsight, I'm like, why though?
Yeah,
there was just so much stuff that was just
prepping you for that management.
Well, it helped. I mean, I learned a lot from it, to be sure. But I got both sides, so I actually wasn't a producer really. but I did producer things, right? So I was doing design work, but then I would also be an actual producer on this stuff. So that's why I have like AP on that title. So basically, after all of that stuff happened, eventually the state came in, and the guy that owned the place like went to jail for a little bit.
Oh,
and,
wow.
like this whole thing, it was just crazy. It was I learned a lot. I also learned, and this is a very hard lesson that I think a lot of people now are very sensitive about, but I learned that sometimes you just have to lay people off. Because
you do learn from being in the industry that people find it hard to do that. I think in California, people find it hard to do that because they can get sued very quickly if you lay off too many people. There's like some laws in place where if you lay off too many people at one time, it's kind of a red flag.
Right.
And if one of those people decides to sue, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Which is bad. But yeah, that's a very true statement. Well, if you see the writings on the wall, you got to make a change.
Well, the thing that they didn't do is they kept all these people employed, and what that meant was that they didn't have money to pay everybody.
Yeah.
So they'd pay some people kind of, but then they wouldn't pay others. And so if they would have been more proactive about saying, okay, well, the money we have is not going to work in 2 months. We've got to cut some people.
Or just maintaining awareness of where they are and really looking at where that red line is and not just letting the company go under, and then going, okay, hey, we need to let people know now that they can't get paid. They could have told people that, in advance from just experience. Like, yeah. I feel that it is better for the studio's viability of, prolonging going under, if that's the case, by just being upfront with people. And a lot of times when they are upfront with people will take that as like, all right, yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah. And they'll move on. And in times with them moving on, that could help because you still need to have people in the background trying to find projects, trying to find things, trying to still do their job instead of everyone trying to jump ship at one time. So,
and my wife had moved to Utah a few months before that. And so, and we bought a house there because I was like, oh man, I've heard about this American dream thing where you like get money and that you can like buy houses and stuff, right?
Yeah. So gotta save, spend, and then save some more.
Yeah, and then but in Utah the cost of living was much cheaper. So I was like, oh man, I can afford a house here. This is what this is what my parents have talked about. And then the economy took a dump, and my house went from, it lost $70,000 in value in a month.
Oh wow! I thought you were gonna do the upside of you bought after the market went down.
There was no upside at this point.
So you bought in 2008.
Yeah, and so I bought it because I thought I was an economic genius. I'm like, oh man, the housing costs are low. I should buy now. And then it just went completely down. So I had when on my first payment for the house, they didn't have my check. I was like, are you kidding me? So
wow.
And so this was all very rough stuff, right? Like,
and you're experiencing it all for the first time. Like, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah. So being in, out of state, I'm not near family. It's just me and my wife. Luckily, she was working at the time, so she was able to kind of cover. And then eventually, I just asked to be laid off so that I could get the unemployment.
Right.
So
that's smart.
So I got that, and they're like, "Can you still come in and work?" I'm like, "No." And I've given you guys enough time.
Sometimes you will find yourself going like no, but then you'll be like, what am I gonna do all day? I've been at a place before where they did something similar to that, where they laid off people, but then they said, hey, you don't have to come in and work, but you can come in and work on your reel, or come in and update your work, or grab what you need, and just use this time. They were like, these machines are going to be sitting here anyway. Just use this time, use these machines. Like, the company really cared. Cool. Yeah. Thinking back, I'm not sure who all benefited from doing that, but I think it kept people's mind off of sitting at home and like sulking in what just happened.
What I did actually during that time was I learned Unreal 3.
Like, that's great. That's perfect.
I basically said, okay, well, I need to learn some skill set to get me competitive and get me out into other markets and things. So I watched a lot of these. This was back when Unreal was not free to download. What you had to do was buy Unreal Tournament 3, and then they had their level editor, and then you could mess with that. And then I found some tutorials, I think, that were included on the disc. And so I just watched those, and it was like this like 3D Buzz like videos on how to do it.
Yeah.
So I learned like Kismet and level editing, and so I was like, okay, I'll just make a bunch of shooter levels and stuff like that. So I learned level design and
like all self-taught at that point. Right?
Yeah, basically. Well, I was watching the tutorial, so it was like self-taught.
Yeah, that's self-taught.
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking the initiative to press play.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Pay attention.
Yes, and go back and go like, oh, I messed that up. Why did I mess that up? And but I learned a lot of stuff through that, and I took a lot of design tests, and I needed to know Unreal to be able to do that.
Yeah,
right.
That's
so good. I basically I had to go to somebody's house actually who had a PC that could run it because I didn't have one at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to his house and then like hang out with his family's like running around. I'm like, hey, can I just use your computer to do this? He's like, yeah. So I was like going there and doing that stuff. So a guy named Henry that I went to his house and he let me do that, which was really cool.
That's awesome. But it sounds like you said earlier, you did start from the bottom. I mean, it sounds like you already got your feet wet as a production assistant.
Yeah.
But when all was said and done, and you knew where you wanted to go, or you knew what you needed to do to elevate yourself to adapt to the changes of the industry.
Yeah.
You went back and you went into that cave like Iron Man 1, right? You were in that cave, you're like, I gotta get this running somehow. Here's my potato. you know, hopefully it'll run. And you learned what you needed to learn. And so I mean, I think that says a lot about where you are in your career right now and the things you've experienced at that time. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but well worth it. And I did a lot of things, and I got a job. It was this weird thing where I did a test, and I sent the thing off, and they were kind enough to actually give me feedback on my test, right? And they were like, we like you, this is cool, but we had a project kind of fall through, so we can't bring you on yet. And it was in Chicago, actually.
Honesty is good, and it sounds like that would have taken you further away.
Yes.
From family.
Yeah, so and I had a house in Utah, right? So they said we can't do it right now, and they reached out to me eventually after I had another job, and I was like, it's a little too late. But that whole experience was really awesome for me because I was able to learn. I went through and did the thing, and they gave me feedback on the level itself, and I was like, oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I learned all that stuff, and it was a test. Like they were saying, can you make a level for a first person shooter that has these restrictions and these things, and this is the setting, and this is the okay, go, right? So I did everything, did the lighting, did the doors opening up, did the dude spawning, did like puzzles, did the whole thing. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't go and research how to get it done a few months before that. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's one of those things. It's almost like you were working for free.
Yeah.
Because you were getting feedback for free, which is awesome.
Yeah.